in 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
Roger, keep your fires west of the smoke. You're cleared hot. An officer hit. Send me the world.
Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again.
Welcome to Tactical Tangents.
Welcome back to Tactical Tangents. This is Mike. This episode is brought to you by Devos Outdoor, your go-to source for lightweight, portable, and versatile lighting solutions built for the outdoors and beyond. Whether you need scene lighting for public safety emergencies or reliable area lighting for your campsite, Devos has you covered. Their LED lanterns offer variable outputs and color options with Bluetooth remote controls that provide a complete ecosystem of lighting in a compact and easy-to-deploy package. These lights are perfect for camping, hunting, search and rescue, crime scene processing, and nighttime operations. Devos optimizes your experience and alleviates your pain points with extra power banks, solar panels, and more. Devos Outdoor ensures that you have long-lasting portable lighting no matter where you are. Check out their lineup at Devos, D-E-V-O-S, outdoor.com or find them on Amazon. Again, that's Devos, D-E-V-O-S, outdoor.com. This episode was also brought to you by Loa Boots. Start your day off on the right foot with footwear that was designed for those who stand relentlessly in the face of adversity. I wear Loa every single day, for miles on canine searches and for hours on tactical operations in inclement weather. No matter what, Loa keeps me moving. Whether you run, hike, hunt, or fight, on the streets or out in the woods, Loa has the gear you need to help you conquer whatever challenges you face. Go check out their new line of trail running shoes at Loa Boots, L-O-W-A boots.com, and get outside for some fresh air and daylight. Loa, for those who know where they're going and won't stop until they get there. So I guess you got some questions there, Jim.
I do indeed. For our listeners, it's worth knowing that Mike and I are in person live together. I took a little bit of leave, decided to hang out with my buddy Mike, and it occurred to me, we haven't done a good Mike interview. And specifically, even though we're all about law enforcement, military, and civil concealed carry, we haven't really deep dived with Mike specifically about the life of being a cop. And I think a lot of our listeners tend to either be police adjacent or police interested and might have some questions about what it's like to be a cop and whether they should try to be a cop. And if they try to be a cop, what's involved? Is it worthwhile? Is it hard? Is it scary? Is it dangerous? Is it fun? Do they pay you? Do women throw themselves at you? These are important questions that I want to try to address tonight.
Yeah, and I don't think, Jim has brought this up before, and this might seem counterintuitive because I have a podcast, but I actually don't like talking about myself all that much, which is one of the reasons maybe I've been more resistant to it. You'll notice in a lot of the topics, it's about the topics. We try not to make it the Mike and Jim show. But I am reaching a kind of a sunset phase of my career. And so fair enough. There's probably some bigger picture getting into law enforcement questions that I guess we could address.
Yeah, I like that. So you said you're approaching the sunset of your career, and we never really know, right? When we started this, I was at the sunset of my career, and it turns out I had a lot more career to do. But this is not your first day as a cop. How long have you been a cop? When did you start?
It's been almost 17 years.
That's a long time. So when you joined, that was right around the LA riots or something like that? How long ago was 17 years ago? What has changed?
2008. Well, there's all kinds of stuff that's changed, right? Tech has come a long way. Drones are a thing now. Ferguson happened. There's been a big shift in policing overall, Ferguson and George Floyd and all of those things were, watershed type things that shaped what is now the future. The wars ended, and not only did the wars end, but we got a lot of people out of the wars with experiences from the wars that I think probably played a big role, right?
On both sides of police interactions, I imagine.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you have body-worn cameras when you started out?
No, I didn't get a camera until, I want to say 2018. I was probably 10 years into my career.
Did you have a taser when you started out?
There were, not right away, no. There were a few body-worn cameras earlier. I want to say, 2015-ish, we started to get some cameras, maybe a little bit earlier than that, but they were like in the test, like we're testing out which ones we want. Axon was around, but not as big of a deal.
Man, I should have bought stock in Axon 20 years ago.
Same.
Holy cow.
Yeah, for real.
Did every patrol car have a rifle in it when you started out?
No, and they still don't. Close. A lot, but actually that's not true. I think the number's gone down quite a bit, to be honest.
Interesting. So if I were considering a career in law enforcement, let's say I met you in like a guitar shop or a coffee shop, you're getting your, what is it? Schmoopy Mocha Lotta Chino or whatever. And I was like, hey, you're a cop. I want to be a cop someday. What would you tell me?
Fundamentally, just stay out of trouble and be a decent human. A lot of the job is surprisingly, my stepdad growing up was a cop, and he always used to tell me that a lot of being a cop is just common sense. And it's surprising how accurate that is, but also uncommon. It is.
Common sense is harder than it sounds. It's easy to say and it's hard to do, right?
And there's something about, I think, the typical cop personality that you have to be careful with, because although there is a lot of common sense, there's also a lot of knuckleheaded cops, right? And so it's spectrum, like we like to say on this show.
Yeah.
But in terms of someone getting into it, basic requirement stuff is like these days, if you have a clean-ish background and a heart rate, you'll probably be all right and you'll make it. There's always like the, why do you want to be a cop? Like what are you going for? Right. If you've never done any like ride-alongs and actually seen what the day-to-day is like, that's probably worth doing. Cause I think it's a lot of the cool stuff is romanticized in the movies and TV and stuff like that. And so it's not that stuff. A lot of times some of it can be, there are definitely a number of movie scenes that have played out in my career in some way, but
Super Troopers, I imagine.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But get a real feel for it, because I think a lot of people get into it and find out pretty quickly it's not what they thought and it's not for them. So you have to be, especially like we talk about what's changed since I started. You've got to be a pretty patient person, really, these days.
I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Maturity and patience are huge.
As far as the basics of being a cop, if you're explaining to my mom what a cop is and needs to be able to do, what would you explain to her?
In terms of what you have to be able to do, I mean, you make a lot of decisions, and I think it's important to recognize the impact of those decisions. A lot of cops can be, cynical is not the word, but maybe a bit dismissive about the amount of responsibility inherent in some of the decisions that they're making. Like if you arrest that guy for DUI or domestic violence, you're potentially altering their career, the futures, like the jobs that they will qualify for or be able to keep. And so I think there's, going back to the maturity thing, there's a lot of stuff like that, but decision making is a fundamental part of it. You've got to be comfortable making decisions. And I think the complexity of those decisions can be kind of wide ranging. A lot of people think about the shoot, no shoot, split second decision making. And yes, there is that part of it, right? But going back to decisions with consequence, you can be on a pretty simple, we'll use the example of a domestic violence call, domestic disturbance type call, where you've got a couple sides of the story, right? Whatever evidence there might be surrounding that situation. And then you've got to weigh all of it at 2:00 in the morning to decide, like, is someone going to go to jail tonight? And if not, how do I make sure that I can keep this household as peaceful and safe as I can for everyone in it by not arresting somebody? Like, is there a way that someone can go stay with a friend or a family member, get a hotel room? If I leave them here together, is that going to be, because the last thing you want to do is leave a husband and wife that were just fighting together and then one of them gets killed because you left them there, right? So
you bear some responsibility for the outcome.
Yeah,
at that point.
Yeah,
right?
and so like I said, the decision making is just you've got to be able to just different kinds of decision making. Sometimes it's very like meticulous, methodical, thoughtful. Sometimes it's more like that split second stuff, right? And then sometimes it's also like a lot of leadership. You know, you're supposed to be a community leader. That's a big part of it. And so, you know, you make that traffic stop because the 19-year-old kid's driving like a dickhead with his exhaust and he's, you know, peeling his tires around. And then you have that moment of like, do I give this guy a ticket or can I have like a man-to-man with him and maybe get through to him on some, like maybe if I'm cool, right? Those are leadership decisions. And so like maturity, right? There's a lot of types of decisions you have to make. And so you've got to be prepared for that.
So you mentioned patience, you've mentioned maturity. When you think of the most successful cops you have worked with, the ones that you respect the most, where you're like, oh, that's the kind of cop I want to be like. Can you describe some of the traits that really stand out to you with the best cops you've crossed paths with?
Calm. Calm is contagious. And it could be calm in making those decisions, but also in the way that you handle confrontation, right? Like I think patience and maturity ties into that. Leadership ties into it. Communication skills. A lot of cops talk like robots. The good ones don't.
Drives me nuts.
Yeah, it does.
As you know.
It drives me batshit too.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that, and this is kind of a leadership thing, is a lot of the ones that talk like robots are just mimicking some of the people around them. They think that's just how they're supposed to talk.
Yeah. And
like the leadership is to be like, hey, we don't have to be like that. We could just be normal, reasonable humans and just talk, right? Wow. And so calm, able to communicate, leadership, like you've got to be willing to go against the current if it's the right thing to do. Yeah, I think if you talk just generally about traits, those are the big ones.
Can you talk me through why someone who's interested in a career in law enforcement would go to a city police department versus county sheriff versus state troopers versus like FBI? Like, how do you sort out, what advice would you give to someone trying to figure out what path they want to take?
Half of it is just, sometimes it's just who's hiring and where can you get in the door, right?
Get a job.
And sometimes people are applying at several agencies and it's just, hey, whichever one can get me through the process. Because they're lengthy processes. And when people want a job, usually they want it like they're working in some place that they don't want to be. And so they're trying to get the F out. And so they're just applying wherever will take them. So some of it's just that. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because they all have all the experience in all the places that you can go. It's varied, but they all have good with the bad, right? If you like the small town community vibe where you're doing the more like, you know, everybody, you know, everyone's story, you know, everyone's history, and you can be a community problem solver, which is there's something to be said for that. It's a cool position, like, especially if you like leadership type stuff, then those smaller, like rural agencies, county sheriff type thing might be good. If you want to go where there's a lot of action and it's just fast paced, a city environment might get you more of that. Again, that's where I ended up, but it's not to say that it doesn't come with a cost, right? You also, some of the smaller agencies, you get more time to do your own follow-up and investigations. You can actually see things through to the end, and that can be cool to be able to track down a lead and actually, you know, see a case to its ending versus in a city, it's on to the next, right? You're doing the start of the report, write the report, send it up, and on to the next. The state agencies, so especially like a highway patrol, state trooper, something like that, getting in the door in those places, you just have to understand that like you're going to be doing traffic enforcement mostly. And there's some interdiction stuff if you're into that sort of thing. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think there is something to be said about the types of personalities, right? I've never been a big traffic guy. It's not to say it's not important. It's not to say that there's anything wrong with being a traffic guy, but I didn't get into law enforcement because I wanted to be a rule enforcer. That's just not my jam, right? I want to deal with the people that need to be held accountable for things, but not just for the sake of enforcing rules. It just didn't suit my personality. So I've done a lot of traffic stops, but not necessarily in the enforcement. If you're going to highway, you're going to do a lot of that. But the state agencies also typically have a lot of task forces, and they get to do some cool stuff and they're resourced for that sort of thing at the state level. So that's cool. Because then you get to work with all the agencies. Your state and your local and county agencies will have those too, and you'll get to work around other agencies and people. So they're out there. And then the feds, the biggest thing with the feds is just the bar is higher in terms of most of them require a degree. So you've got to have that going from the get-go. And in general law enforcement, at a state level, municipal, county level, you're going to start out in the field and then maybe move into investigations. Whereas a lot of your federal work, you're going to start doing investigations and then maybe do more field stuff down the road. So it depends on what you're into. If you like doing the detail-oriented investigative work, then feds is cool. And it's not to say they don't do field work, because they do. But I think the emphasis is just a little bit different, because a lot of the federal crimes, you're not chasing the shoplifters down. You're not doing a lot of the domestic violence calls.
A lot of that crime is, honestly, it's financial stuff. It's big fraud, people ripping off the government, people ripping off investors, that kind of thing, right? One area where I think there's a lot of growth right now in politics or whatever they are, but like Border Patrol and ICE, they are hiring like crazy. Can you speak to Border Patrol especially? Yeah. So if you want to go the federal route that does not require a degree, that's an option. And again, they're federally resourced. They've got money. They've got some cool assignments. I mean, there's obviously just being a field agent, but they've got a lot of other like special units and stuff that are legit. I've heard really impressive things about their SWAT. Yeah, BORTAC and BORSTAR. Yeah. So BORTAC is like they have a national tactical level team, and then they also have, I think, like regional ones. I don't remember how it's organized anymore. It's changed, but every BORTAC guy I've ever met is squared away. And then BORSTAR, which is like their EMS search and rescue side of it, and they do a lot of aviation type stuff. I mean, those guys are also legit. But every Border Patrol agent I've ever talked to, I mean, for one thing, you know where you're going to be working for the most part. It's going to be along the southern border somewhere, probably. Yeah. Not to say there's not other assignments, but I mean, that comes with all the weather and the terrain that come with that. You're going to be out in the field hiking around a lot, which if you're into that is great. Summer sucks around this area. But every Border Patrol person I've ever talked to has something to say about like who their boss is going to be every 4 years and what their conditions are going to be like. Yeah. And so there's years where it's like, oh, this is great. And then there's years where it's like, they're obviously put in a different, and I think that's just the nature of politics at the federal level. That's probably not unique to just Border Patrol, but I think they feel it because it's a politically charged enforcement area. Yeah. I have heard that if you're going to go city or county, you're going to start out working in the jail. Is that true? So when I grew up in California, so that's true for most of like for some county agencies, like the sheriff's departments, not usually cities. And here, at least in Arizona, I don't think that's necessarily true. You can either get hired as a detention or corrections officer or as a deputy. There's no mandatory like working in the jail in the beginning. A lot of the county agencies in Southern California where we grew up had you had a jail rotation in the beginning, and then you got out to the field eventually. I don't know outside of like those SoCal agencies. I don't know how widespread that is, to be honest with you. I think at the end of the day, I know that we have a lot of corrections officers that come through the police academy. They did corrections at the state or county level for a while, and then they decided to become cops. But I think that's very regional. I'm not sure. Can you speak to like the non-sworn jobs in a typical police department? Like CSI is so hot right now, but like, what are the options? What's worth doing and what's not worth doing in those jobs? So at my agency, and there's mixed feelings about this. We've really leaned into like these non-sworn, some of these positions. We have our like community service officers. Some agencies will call them like police aides, or I don't know. They probably go by a dozen different names depending on the area, but they're out in the field. They're taking some of the low level reports, but they're not cops. So they don't have necessarily like a lot of enforcement power. I think that they can write like civil like
basic tickets and stuff, but not like criminal stuff. They take reports, they'll do traffic collisions and those sorts of things. And we have really expanded the use of those. I mean, the staffing situation in policing is a big deal in 2025, right? So we've been hiring a lot of these CSOs, and it attracts if people want to do shift or field work, but they're not necessarily trying to get into being a cop, like they're not trying to fight people and, carry a gun and all that. But they like the CSI type stuff.
Yeah, they like the scene.
Yeah,
part of the family.
They can go and they can do that and not commit to the whole career field, right?
Yeah.
Or the other side of it is you can get hired as a CSO before you could be a cop. You could get hired as a CSO when you're 18. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of become like a recruiting pipeline for us, where you can get out in the field, you could do some of the work around the people, and then it's kind of your entryway into it. We've also started hiring basically non-sworn, like civilian investigators, and they're helping out all the detectives and stuff. So they're basically like non-sworn detectives.
Huh.
And they're kind of helping with a lot of, and like I said, I mean, reasonable minds can differ on like where the lines should be crossed on how much they're allowed to do and aren't. I think like anything, people are trainable, right? You can make it what you will, but I think it's part of the way that people are innovating for staffing problems.
Yeah.
So.
What about the application process? Say I do want to become a cop. How do I even start? Like, where do I start?
Whatever agency will have a website, typically like a human resources page. You can go do an online application, upload whatever things. That'll get the ball rolling. At some point, there will be and the order can vary from place to place, right? Typically, there's going to be some form of a written test, maybe some form of an interview. My city's gone away from a lot of things because we can't even get enough people through the door. They're not going to eliminate people. For example, we don't do an interview. The only time you really get interviewed is when you're going into backgrounds.
Yeah.
So historically, though, there would be a written test, sometimes a physical fitness test. We don't do that anymore either. An oral board interview. And then at some point, if you make the cut, if they're doing any cuts, then you'll make it into a background process. There'll be a polygraph. Typically, if you pass those things, you'll get a conditional offer. Typically, and again, varies. You get a conditional offer that basically says, hey, if you pass the medical and the psych exams, you got the job. And then you'll go do those, check those boxes, and then get a hire date, start the academy.
There are some areas where there's political discussion about you got to be a woman or a minority to get the job. Is that a thing that you have seen?
No, not about having to be. No, I think I know that there are recruiting efforts in that vein to try to diversify the force. And again, politically charged, people can feel how they want about it. But there are recruiting efforts and resources that are going into recruiting more diverse crowds. So but I don't know that it is to the exclusion of otherwise qualified people that want to be a cop. We're having a hard enough time filling the seats that we got right now. That's not to say that there aren't agencies out there that are maybe favoring. Who knows? I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and say that every agency is above reproach when it comes to their hiring practices, but I don't think if a well-qualified candidate walks in the door, they're going to get turned away. We have a hard enough time getting those. And
I don't necessarily want to deep dive that topic, but consider for our listeners that there are real advantages to having some women cops, right? There are certain circumstances where you need a female on that scene, right?
Oh, yeah.
And diversity, I think, it kind of sometimes gets a bad rap. It's not always about checking all the boxes, but having a diversity of backgrounds among your team tends to make a higher performing team. Not everyone has the same group think. You have someone who has some tool that can help in whatever that scenario is. You mentioned the polygraph. If I smoked weed, can I be a cop?
Yes.
If I smoked crack, can I be a cop?
Depends. With all of those questions, so there are state guidelines, and then each agency might have more, their own standards beyond that. And then there's whatever the state says is okay. And there's a bunch of stuff in there that's going to be about how many times, how recently it was, how old you were at the time, things like that. Now, it used to be that there was like specific, if you smoked weed in high school, you're going to be fine, right? But if you smoked weed a couple weeks ago, maybe not. Nowadays, I don't know that that's anything that would get you excluded because it's legal in a lot of places. Yeah. The trick is that a lot of the criminal justice networks that you're going to have to access are federally regulated. So even though it might be legal in your state, there are still requirements on the federal side for that. So it used to be that like if you smoked weed in high school, you're going to be fine, but if you did any hard drugs, you're out. That has relaxed. That's not true anymore.
What if I got arrested for shoplifting when I was 13?
No one cares.
What if I stole a car when I was 13?
You're probably fine. I'm serious. You're probably fine.
Glad we had this interview.
Now, if you did it recently or as an adult, that would be different. But like, yeah, you go joyriding when you're a teenager and you did stupid shit and you're owning up to it at this point, like assuming that the rest of your background reflects that you
are
have life
fundamentally
experience.
A decent human.
Yeah, you have life experience, but you grew up and all those things, like you're probably going to be okay.
Tell me about the police academy, and is it a thing I should be scared of?
No, I think the police academy is honestly, I mean, I thought it was pretty easy. Maybe that's just from the background that I came from prior to that, but there are academic requirements. So expect some community college level expectations in terms of studying and doing homework. It's not hard, but you do need to understand some legal stuff, right? Like reading state laws and being able to apply those, case law, so you have to have some good reading comprehension. There's some critical thinking and things like that. But so there's some, I would say, academic stuff that you have to be prepared for. The physical stuff, you're going to learn how to fight. You're going to learn how to shoot. You're going to learn how to drive. A lot of people come to the academy. They've never been in a fight before. They've never been punched in the face before. You're going to have you're signing up for a job where you're going to do those things. And so there has to be some of that. It's just part of it. It's nothing to be afraid of. The bar is it's not that difficult. But it's a physical job. So expect that. It's not that bad. Usually you're getting paid, right? There are places where you can pay to put yourself through an academy and then take your certification and go apply somewhere already ready to go. But for the most part, you get hired somewhere, they send you through an academy and you're getting paid to be there. So like embrace it.
I like that. So you graduate the academy, you go right out onto the street, like solo?
No. So again, places vary, right? There are small little agencies that, you have a police academy and you're on. In fact, there are places still you can get hired as a cop before an academy and actually work out in the field, like little tiny places. Mm-hmm. That's a real thing. Wild. But generally speaking, you finish an academy. If you go to an academy that's like a multi-agency, you might have some department-specific training that you'll do after the academy. Learn how to use their computers, how to use their facilities, their whatever procedures. And then typically you go through a field training program where you'll ride with another officer and get up to speed under the supervision and guidance of a field training officer or a series of field training officers, depending on
how long normally is that. At what point are you a full-fledged cop out doing cop things?
Again, that's going to depend. I want to say our FTO program is like 15 or 16 weeks, maybe 17 weeks, something like that. So it's another few months. I mean, you figure you get hired, the police academy is 6 months or so, usually 5-6 months, something like that. And then you're going to have another probably 4 or 5 months of field training after that. So by the end of your first year, you're on your own.
And you were an FTO, right? You have trained several rookies.
Yep. Now there are places that have like a 5-week FTO, like you do FTO for a couple weeks and they're
off you go.
Off you go. Yeah, here are the keys. And there are probably places that don't even really do much of an FTO program. It's like you got an academy, here's the keys. And that's one of the there's 18,000 police agencies in the country. They all have different ways of doing things. Like we're not all on the same page. We have different levels of resources and funding and staffing and blah, blah, blah. The variance is very high. And I think that's one of the hardest things that a lot of people don't realize is like, you can go work for a large city somewhere and not realize how different it would be at one of these tiny little places. So
even like 30 minutes away,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So as an FTO, what are the most common rookie mistakes that you come across, or the worst rookie mistakes you come across?
Well, I'll start with just challenges in general. Usually the things that people have the most trouble with are geography, figuring out how to get somewhere using a map, right? Or Google Maps these days. But just trying to get around town in time-sensitive way, right? And report writing. People struggle with report writing. So those are the areas where a lot of rookies really, where you see them struggle typically. There's the basic decision-making thing. And like I said, there's levels of complexity in the decision-making. Sometimes I need quick decisions, like time-sensitive, competing priorities, conflicting information, right? You're like shoot, no shoot, act, don't act, speed up, slow down. We've talked about it on a show. That's like one of the hardest things to figure out. And then there's those times where it's like, I need you to be able to take this puzzle of an investigation, weigh all the information available, and then make appropriate decisions. Who are you going to call? Are you going to arrest someone or not? Are you going to get detectives involved or not? Do we need a search warrant or not? Like, and all of those things, that decision making can be a real struggle. Another thing is being able to talk to people. Like a lot of rookies really have a hard time with, like, can you call someone on their bullshit, right? Like, and, or do you believe just reading people, right? Do you believe what this person is telling you? Hey man, you got ID? No, I forgot my wallet. Oh, what's your name? Jim. Like, is it though? You know, like, is this person lying to me?
I mean, guess those aren't your pants.
A lot of, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of just things like that. So there's 1,000 rookie mistakes that we can talk about all day, you know, but in terms of what people really struggle with, they boil down to those things typically.
You mentioned report writing. How much of your job is spent writing reports? Are you parked typing out on your little laptop?
I mean, in my assignments now, not nearly as much, but typically I would say, gosh, I don't know. I guess it depends on the type of calls that you're doing and how busy you are, but probably 30-40%.
One of my biggest surprises doing ride-alongs with Mike was learning how he thinks about DUI cases. Like, this was legitimately a thing from the outside looking in, I never would have expected. So can you talk me through, you pull someone over for DUI, what does that do to the rest of your shift?
DUIs are just, everyone gets them, right? So they're very aggressively defended. Cops get them, judges get them, doctors get them, pilots get them. And so because of that, they're aggressively defended, and they're very procedural and meticulous because you've got to make sure that you've done everything right. And so there's a lot of paperwork involved. There's a lot of forms involved. There's a lot of legal stuff just in terms of, you know, it's like climbing a ladder, right? You don't just like stop someone and like, oh, they had a beer earlier, and so you arrest them, right? There's like, okay, well, am I at the point of even getting them out of the car? And then if I get them out of the car, I do field sobriety tests, and those have to be conducted in a specific way because those field sobriety tests, the reason we can say that they show what we claim they show is because they've been validated through research, which means they need to be conducted in that validated and standardized way, right? So you've got to follow that exactly to a T. And whether that means you're reading off of a script or you're doing it from memory, you still need to make sure that you're procedurally correct. And then you reach the point of making an arrest, and then there's the legal side of it of getting a chemical test of some form. If they refuse that, are you going to get a search warrant? Then there's like license suspension stuff. I mean, it's just, so they can be very time consuming. A lot of people don't like doing them because they're so aggressively defended, which is, I think, a funny thing that cops do. Is like, they're afraid of court. They're afraid of a defense attorney. And I'm like, if that's the monster that keeps you awake at night, like, why did you sign up to be here? I think it's kind of entertaining personally. Like the little sparring matches that I've had with attorneys in court are a good time to me. Like, bring it on, dude. Like, and you know, look, I'm not here to like trash like defense attorneys or anything like that. But the point is, cops get afraid of it because they're afraid of having to have that be put on the spot, right? Yeah. And being called on a procedural mistake. And they have a really hard time with being able to just say in front of a judge and jury, literally, like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm a human, turns out. Like, I might have missed that step. That's my bad. Yeah. But here's what I do know. Here's the things that I did correctly.
Yeah.
Right.
Realizing that you're a dude and that you do not speak for women, let alone all women, could you tell us a little bit about what your female colleagues talk about as far as the challenges they face in their job? Like, what do they say when they talk about being a cop to you? I can synopsize what I've heard from someone that is in the know and this sort of thing. And how does she describe this? Basically, it's like every female cop is going to get lumped into the category of being one of three things. Now, I'm not going to describe those here because I don't want them to be they might not sell well on the algorithms, but you know, you're either a bitch. What's the other one? The other one we're not going to say. Yeah.
Because it's not very nice. Or a slut. Either a bitch, a slut, or a something else.
Yeah.
And so like they have to kind of early on decide which one of those camps they want to fall into, you know, or it's like I have to act like one of the guys. Yeah. Right. And I think there's something to be said. There's a lot of discussion about like, I've been wanting to do an episode on this, but I need like to actually study up on it about like masculinity. Like, where does masculinity become toxic? Where is it a good thing? But I think that it would be worthwhile for a lot of the guys in law enforcement to really take some time to reflect on, like, you know, people have strong feelings. Some people think like women shouldn't do this job, and they're just outright like women can't do this job. Women shouldn't do this job. Right.
Cops say that, or people like
cops say that. I've heard cops say that. And it's like, okay, dude, there are some female cops that I would take to battle light years ahead of some of the male cops that I like. That is not the metric.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a lot to unpack in all of that, but I think it would be worth taking some time to really think about that for my guy coworkers.
Can you speak to pay and benefits? And understanding it varies, but just basic baseline nationwide, how are cops paid?
Honestly, if you look at it through the lens of being able to make a good living with only a high school diploma or GED, cops are paid pretty well, especially when you factor in the capacity to make more money with overtime and things like that. Now everyone wants more money, right? Like there's always going to be, and that variance is real. There is a small agency in the area that I work. It's a very small agency. I think, I don't know, there's probably only 10, 15, maybe 20, if that. I don't even know if there's that many, honestly. Officers that they have, and their starting pay is less than like In and Out. It's crazy. And so you can imagine what their hiring pool must look like, with that kind of pay. So, but most of the places that you go, you can make pretty decent money. And as you get time and tenure, like your pay will increase. I mean, I make pretty good money for what I do at the end of the day. Like I said, we can all complain about wanting more money, but most of the people that get into this line of work aren't doing it for that.
Yeah. If money is a big factor, and there are lots of reasons why money is always a big factor, but if it is there a agency or career path that you would recommend? Like if money really needs to drive part of your train, you got to support kids, mortgage, ailing parents, whatever. Do you go Fed? Do you go state? Do you go county? Do you find a rich town and try to work there? Does that make a difference?
No, I mean, I think you could you just shop it around. Because, the other thing you have to factor in any of those decisions is going to be cost of living, right? Yeah. The feds the feds will have a pretty upfront pay scale. You'll be able to see what you're going to make. But one thing that the feds, I don't think, get much in the way of is like actual overtime.
Yeah.
Like it's salaried. So like you're making what you're making. I know there's some, I don't remember the term, but I've heard some of them use a term that talks about like extra money, like stipends they get for certain things that they might do. But it's overtime becomes different. So you might have a higher base pay and know predictably that you'll make better money than you would as a cop.
Yeah.
Remember, it requires a college education, right?
Yeah.
So that helps. But you work for an agency that otherwise pays decent and go make overtime, and I mean, you can make a killing.
Yeah. Can you speak to schedule, like days, nights? How many days a week do you work? How many days a month do you work?
So my department does 4 10s, so 4 10-hour days. There are some agencies that do 5 8s. There are some that do 12-hour shifts. A lot of the 12-hour shift type of agencies is going to be on like a 3-4 schedule where you work 3 days a week, 1 week, 4 days a week, the other week to balance out the 12 hours, 36 versus 48 hours. And then there's some other oddball shifts out there. There's like a 9, 10, or I don't know, 10. There's like a 9-hour shift thing that's got like an 8-day rotation or 10-day. I don't know. There's some oddball ones out there, but for the most part, 10 and 12-hour shifts are probably the most common. I know some do 8-hour shifts, and then you're working 5 days a week. Nights, I mean, it's shift work, right? So you're going to be on some form of early mornings, swing shift where you're working kind of like evening, into the night, afternoon into the night kind of thing. There's like late swings, early swings, or you're going to be working overnight, like straight up graveyard midnight shifts. If you're new, you're probably going to go to nights for at least a while, and you can expect that to be true. And then if you want to go to days when you get time on, then the opportunity is probably there. A lot of people, when they're new, especially enjoy nights, and there are perks to it. But it does take its toll for sure.
So I need to jump in on this. This is a thing that I didn't understand when I was young, and I'm not a cop, but I have definitely worked crazy schedules over the course of my career. And it was one of those things where I could do it a lot easier in my 20s than I could in my 30s and way easier than my 40s, right? And that is, I think, one of the biggest things, if I'm a young guy considering a job like this, understanding the long-term impact of shift work and what impacts that has when you have kids, for example, right? The soccer games don't move with your shift work. Your sleep cycle, your spouse's sleep cycle is not ever going to be aligned with that. Now that's not unique to cops, right? Lots of jobs have shift work. Factory work has shift work, nurses, all that. But that is a distinct attribute of law enforcement, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that there are, and again, same thing when I was younger.
Yeah.
Nights, I was like, yeah,
hell yeah.
There's a lot of things I like about nights. There's less traffic. It's not as hot outside. There's fewer people, more action, more cool stuff happens, or at least seemingly. That's not probably actually true, but it seems like the density of action versus mixed in with all the mundane everyday stuff. I think there's just as much action during the day. There's just also a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
So you have all those things factoring into it. There's a lot that I think nights has going for it if you can find a way to still have an otherwise healthy sleep thing. But understanding that our biology, like we are not nocturnal, like evolution has taught us to be awake during the day, like to be in the sun, right? That's just how we are. And so there are long-term, and we're learning now more and more, there's very legitimate long-term health issues that come with it, right? Your risk for all kinds of diseases. The World Health Organization has designated shift work as a carcinogen. It's like a type 2A or I don't know, something, but highly probable increased risk for cancer, all kinds of different cancers. It's not good for your health. Like at the end of the day, it's just not good for your health. And like, that's part of it. When I talk about the sunsetting of my career, especially, being in my life situation that I'm in these days, like I want to live a little bit past retirement, and it's time to get my sleep figured out a little bit because it's all over the place.
What about special teams? If I want to be on SWAT or be a canine handler or work in the air unit, when does that become a realistic opportunity? And if I want to go that way, what should I know about it?
Typically, I mean, every agency is going to have where they set their bar, right? But usually 2-3 years on is where, for us, it's usually 3, is where the line gets drawn for, you can start applying for other things, right? FTO, any of those special assignments, whether it's, canine SWAT, air support, motors, DUI, detective, somewhere around 3 years probably. In terms of preparing for them, I mean, the biggest thing is like getting out there and exposing yourself to it and seeing what it's actually about and what you have to be good at. I didn't know anything about being a dog handler. I didn't know much about dogs when I got into canine, but what I did know is early in my career, I went on a canine search with one of our guys for a home invasion suspect that bailed out of a pursuit. And we went searching this neighborhood, and we were at a church, and there was like a storage area, and the dog handler points at that, and he's like, hey, he's in there. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, he's in there. Hey, dude, you better come out. You're going to get bit by the dog. Okay, I'm giving up. And the guy comes out, and I was like, that was the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm doing that. Because I would have no idea that guy was in there, but the dog told us. And I'm like, that was awesome. So, then I started going out and, getting in the bite suit and hiding for him and decoying for all the canine guys and asking lots of questions and figuring out how to prepare myself for success and then being competitive in that process. But knowing what the day-to-day is like and what you're actually getting into, it's just exposure, right? You have to go ask those questions. And see.
Can you speak to your lifestyle? And I've heard cops over the years talk about needing to live in the city where they work or needing to not live in the city where they work. Like, is that a factor for you?
No, I think for a lot of people, there's like an idea that you don't want to like shit where you eat kind of thing, right? Like it's one of those, hey, I work in the city, so I want to be kind of like detached from that. But there's also, and I think on some level it's valid, even though I don't want it to be for me, but for some areas. But there is some argument to be said about having some ownership in the community that you're going to serve, right? In terms of like, hey, you live here, you should care, and all those things. Again, I'm not moving into the city limits, but I get the basis for that, right? Like fundamentally, I understand the kind of the philosophy there.
Do you ever run into people you arrested, like when you're at the supermarket, stuff like that?
I've run into people I've dealt with at work. Yeah. I mean, I haven't had any like confrontations, but I've recognized people, and not all the time, not a lot, but it's happened.
Is it just like running into your teachers at the supermarket, or is it like, hey, I need to probably not be here?
No, I think like for the most part, I don't think they probably realize, like I probably remember them better than they remember me, because for them, it was, in a sense, it was personal that they were like, they got arrested, but they were thinking about themselves. They weren't really, most of the time. Yeah. The people that I think have had issues and had like run-ins and stuff are going to be more like longer term, bigger cases. I mean, we've had a guy that was getting like death threats, and his family was getting threatened and stuff like that.
Tell me about pension and retirement.
Again, that's going to be like state to state. It's going to vary. Everyone has different rules, but there are usually state pensions that require like so much time in service, and then based on when you leave, how much you get. And I think a lot of times, whatever the most you made is what you get is based off of. So like for me, I can retire at 20 years and I can take 50% of my highest 3 consecutive years as my pension.
What do most cops do after they retire? Like, are they completely just not working, just living off the government teat, or do they become goat farmers or something? Like, what do they do?
It's all across the board. I think some will go be cops somewhere else. It kind of double dip the system in a sense. They won't get a pension obviously that way necessarily unless they go to like a different state. But I think like, so when I say at 20 years, I can retire and take 50% of my highest 3, that's changed. So the people that came on after me at some point, now they have to do 25 years to get that. And it's their highest 5 years. So the math all changes, right? Because then you're looking at like, how long do I want to do in this job before I take that pension? Because the other thing is, if I leave at 20, I get 50%. But if I stay up to 32 years, then I get 80%. And then there's obviously everything in between. So I don't know the numbers, but 25 to 30 years, I would get more than 50% of my high 3. So it depends on what was your highest 3 years? Because at some point, like let's say I promoted, I went to a special assignment, I made lots of overtime for a few years, and I don't plan on doing that again. And that's my high 3 was back then, and now I'm doing something that's more chill. Then I'm not going to mess with it, right? But let's say you're getting to that, like where I'm at, 17 years, I'm coming up on 20. Let's say I went and promoted, and I might not hit that high 3 until I have 20 some years on, right?
Let's talk real quick about rank and promotion. So it's funny as an outsider hearing police use kind of paramilitary ranks, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Are you expected to promote? Is it like the military where it's up or out?
No.
So how does the pyramid look? How much more do you get paid? What changes if you're a sergeant? What changes if you're a lieutenant or captain or chief or whatever?
Generally speaking, what you're talking about is you've got officers and detectives are your basic operations, right, of policing. Your sergeants are typically your frontline supervisors, right? So every squad of detectives or patrol cops or whatever special assignments has a frontline supervisor that's in charge of them. Those are your sergeants. When you get to the captain, lieutenant captain ranks, those are like your management, right? Middle management.
Yeah.
And then your chiefs and assistant chiefs is like executive leadership type stuff.
So you could be a cop for 20 years and never be a sergeant, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a cop for 17, and
but there isn't a distinct expectation. That's not a Mike thing. That's a normal thing in law enforcement.
Lots of people do that.
Okay.
Conversely, some people promote as soon as they possibly can.
Yeah,
and that shows too.
What about the social impact of being a cop? Does it improve your dating situation? Do you have like groupies, or is it like the opposite where they're like, "Oh, you're a cop. Don't even talk to me."
There's both.
Okay.
There is a social impact for sure. Period. Right. Like you get introduced as, "Hey, this is my friend Mike the cop." Most of your friends are. It's really, really hard to have friendships outside of the career. Like I put active work into trying to have friendships outside of being cops.
Oh,
and
for our younger listeners, this is a thing that may not be obvious. Making new friends as an adult is
hard enough.
Freaking weird, right? Like you're not in class with these people all day, every day. And the number of new friendships that start once you're in your 30s or 40s, you can count on like one hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to cultivate that outside of law enforcement when you're in it is really tough. And like I said, when you do, you will always be introduced as, "This is my friend, he's a cop." Like at the party, you're always like, "Oh, the cop." And then everyone wants to hear stories, right?
Yeah.
Like, "What's the craziest thing you've ever seen?" And it's like, I
just want to chill.
Gets weird. And it's not to say that like I don't have the stories and I got some go-tos and stuff, but like sometimes you want to get out. The healthy thing is to try to get out of that identity, right? And not just be consumed by it, which is a challenge for a lot of people as well. So there's that. As far as like the dating stuff, yeah, it's really funny. There are people that are like, "Ooh, dig a guy in uniform," right? And that badge bunnies or whatever, sure. But then there's also like people that distinctly will not they want nothing to do with you when they find out that you're a cop.
I think we should start a cop dating website called Badge Bunnies. This could be Tactical Tangents 2.0. I'm all in. You mentioned something about like the emotional impact of, you don't want that to be your whole identity. I imagine you've seen some stuff in your career. Does every cop suffer PTSD? How do you handle it? Like what's your journey like with that?
PTSD is it's a diagnosis, right? Yeah. And so we all have trauma. We all have stressors, not just cops. Everyone, all of us have trauma and stressors. We all handle those differently, right? Some good, some bad. cops get exposed to a lot, for sure. And it's one of the things that it's important for cops, especially when like you're in the thick of it, right? You're in your career, to realize that the things that you see and you do and you experience are not normal things. And there's, again, plenty of people in everyday life outside of law enforcement in anything have seen plenty of ugly things, right? But that's not to say that you can go through all the stuff that the job's going to expose you to and assume or expect that it's not going to affect you, because it does. It will. Like, period. So then it just becomes like, well, how do I navigate that? Some of it's detachment. Some of it's, there's all kinds of like ways of coping, but they talk about like the analogies is, you've got like you keep putting garbage in the garbage can, right? Or you keep putting weights in the rucksack, and it just gets heavier and heavier. And at some point you got to take some out, right? The train cars, you keep stacking trains onto the end of, cars onto the end of the train. At some point, like, it's going to get too heavy. So, I think that's the key thing, is just recognizing that like it's not normal and it will add up and you need to do something with that. Like, and I think that's true for everybody in life, period.
If I become a cop, am I going to be an alcoholic by age 30?
I think the statistics would say probably.
To be fair, that's true for most jobs, is in my experience.
I don't know that. It's never that simple or guaranteed, right? There's nothing that's going to say you're definitely going to be anything. But the life expectancy for cops post-retirement, not good.
What about the physical impact on you as a cop? Like, have you been stabbed? Have you been shot? Have you broken an ankle hopping a fence? Like, what are the injuries that you run into?
I haven't broken anything, knock on wood. I have not been stabbed. My dog got stabbed. Oh. I have not been stabbed. I have not been shot. I've been shot at. I have several friends who have been shot. Well, I've got a number of friends who have been shot. Again, it's a physical job. I mean, I think the biggest thing is like you're sitting in a car all day and you're wearing a gun belt all day. And those things, just general mobility and like sitting around, you add that with the adrenaline, cortisol spikes and the bad sleep, and usually a not great diet, and usually difficulty prioritizing fitness otherwise. That's a recipe for disaster in general, right? And you look at cops all the time and you see they're not healthy. But I don't think those physical impacts are necessarily different than a lot of jobs. I mean, postal service workers are driving all day in a car too. And, the Amazon guy, like they're driving all day. And that's probably like the worst part of our job, is how much time you just sitting in a car, typing on the computer at like a weird angle because it's mounted in the center console and I got to like lean sideways. Like, that's not good for anything. So yeah, I mean, sure, you'll twist ankles, you'll get bumps and bruises from getting in fights, and those things all happen. And some people do get hurt more seriously. I've been fortunate. I haven't had anything serious, but it does happen. But again, I think some of those like stuff that's under the radar can be more serious.
Speaking of injuries, can you address the danger level in general of being a cop? And this is a thing I've seen debates on the internet about. Well, the statistics indicate or suggest that being a cop is actually not that dangerous of a job. It's more dangerous to be a garbage man, or more dangerous to be a logger, or I don't know, a teacher in high school or something like that. Like, I don't quote me on those stats, but my understanding is it's not in the top 3 or top 5 most dangerous jobs.
Yeah, if you like search top 10 dangerous jobs, there are years where law enforcement would be listed and years where it's not.
Yeah.
And there are lots of jobs that become more dangerous. I think when people talk about the risk of being a police officer and the worry, right? It's the unpredictability of it. It's that ambiguity. Risk is all relative, right? But there's something to be said about the risk that is personal, in the sense that the decisions that I make might play into how survivable any given shift is. But yeah, I mean, statistically, it's not that dangerous compared to a lot of other jobs. If only statistics made that less worrisome for people, And I think one of the things, like when you talk about, let's say in your like a relationship, right? If your husband or your wife worries about you going to work, again, some of that gets romanticized on TV and movies and shit like that. Even though really it's very unlikely. And I think the other part of it is like it's personal, and that's all. and part of it is also like I come home. Well, not anymore because I'm not married anymore. But when you come home and you tell your spouse about the crazy thing that happened that day, like there are 100%. Like I could think of several stories, and I've told Jim a lot of these, where like, dude, that was sketchy. Like that could have gone bad.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and it didn't, and I'm fine. But like, you think about it after the fact, and you're like, that was pretty fucking scary, actually. and so like that fear factor, like you know that injects a little bit of fuel to that, worry.
And I imagine you have to be thoughtful about what you do share with your spouse because of that, right?
And that's hard, right? Because if your spouse is your person,
you want to be open and honest, but
Well, not only be open and honest, but also talking about it is also a way that we cope.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that I think my marriage took its toll in terms of how that goes. And in relationships since, I've had to be careful. There have been times where I've started to talk about something and I'm like, you know what, maybe that's not the story that needs to be told right now.
Save that one for Jim.
Yeah.
Right?
Or whatever.
Who wants to hear the stories?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not to say that, you have to necessarily like hide or shield everything. That's part of it. Like you're in this together in that sense, but it is a factor for sure.
What is the best part of the job that no one tells you about?
So a lot of people have commented in some of like discussions when you talk about some of the things that you see and you do and how ugly, and you're dealing with a lot of the shit, right? You're dealing with a lot of ugly things. That is true. And I've seen lots of that, and it sucks sometimes. But the best part with that is like what it's also let me see and given me the opportunity to see is the best that humanity has to offer as well. I've seen that among my coworkers, like some of the really cool, outright like heroic, selfless stuff that you're just like, damn, like I work with these people. Like that's badass, right? You see some of the best, and then you see it among like just citizens too. People who have the moral courage to stand up and report stuff or to step in. Like you see shit like that. And it's one of those like, there's a saying, I stole it from a guy from work, but he talks about like, if you go outside and you stare up at the sun, like, and you look into the sky, like all the stars are there, but you can't see them unless it's dark out. Like you need the darkness to see the light. Right. And like, I think that hits it. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of ugly shit, but like it also gives you the opportunity to see some of the best stuff.
Yeah. What is the worst part that nobody tells you about? What's not on the brochure about this that like should give you pause before signing up for it?
That's a harder question. It's going to affect you in ways that you're not going to figure out until it's too late, right? Like it's going to take a toll, like I said, and that it's not a bad toll. I mean, I think the things that I've learned even the hard way in life are still like, there's still a lot of growth to be had in that. Right. But when I look at just like my peers, right. Like, and just cops in general, like I see a lot of people that like either aren't doing well or they're not gonna do well, right? Whether it's like unhealthy lifestyle stuff that's just gonna add up over the years, or bad coping or relationship stuff. Just like you really hope that people can get a hold of those things before it's too late. But like that's part of the journey, right? You kind of figure that out, and like I mean. Jim and I have talked a lot about like therapy and stuff, right? Like I started seeing a therapist, God, it's been 10 years since the first time I started going to therapy. And then it was off and on. I didn't go consistently until more recently, but just as one example, right? Like that's something that like I learned a lot about coping and stuff. Gosh, at that point I was 7 years in.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, I wish I would have had a better grasp of that when I was younger, right? Before it got a hold of me. And that's tough because like when you're 23 and you're running around with your hair on fire, like having a great fucking time, you know, like it's a lot harder to get into that. So I think like it'll just creep up on you. There's a lot of things that can creep up on you if you're not careful. So
knowing what you know now in this environment, like, you know, post Ferguson, post, you know, everything, if you were 22, would you sign up to be a cop again?
I don't know. I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I would say, yeah, probably. There's, without a doubt, I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of experiences that I could think back to that like I wouldn't trade for the world, right? I've gotten to do so much cool shit and I've seen so many cool things, and lots of bad things, but it's like that Stars quote, right? That we talked about is like when you see how bad things can be and like it really helps you highlight the good too, right?
Yeah.
Cause you see like, dude, it could really be worse. Like everything about life could really be worse. Cause you see the worst, like in a lot of ways. So like I wouldn't trade any of that. But like, I don't know, lifestyle wise and, thinking about now, like as my career starts to come to an end where I'm like, what do I want to do when I grow up? You know, now I'm going to figure out like what the next act looks like.
Yeah.
And it's almost like starting all the way over. And would I have been able to do something? I thought I would be able to stick around a lot longer than I probably will. And I'm not like done yet, but I'm getting there. But life took a different course, right? And so here I am trying to figure it out. And I thought I'd be around longer and I'm not. So if I was 22 again, and if I knew everything, like would I, is there something that maybe there'd be more longevity? I don't know. Maybe.
I think this was educational. I think this is a worthwhile interview and it's always good to get, you know, some FaceTime with my buddy Miguel. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I hope if you know somebody thinking seriously about going into law enforcement, maybe share this with them. All right, this is free advice. That's what the cool part about being old farts like us is we got a lot of it and it's free. So come get it. Be safe out there. Be smart out there. See you on the flip side.
All right, guys, that's all we got for tonight. This episode is brought to you by 09 Holsters. We talk a lot about people, ideas, and hardware on this show. So when we invest in equipment, we always think in terms of experience first. 09 is helping you figure out how to carry the gear you need to be effective. They are built by cops, for cops, with a minimalist design and bomb-proof durability. Radio cases, flashlights, body cameras, even canine remotes, you name it, 09 has been filling a void in tactical duty holsters for more than a decade. Go see what they offer at 09 Holsters. That's ZERO, the number 9, holsters.com. 09, built to win the fight.
And this is Jim. This episode is also brought to you by ManusX. We've talked a lot about the tactical fantasy on this podcast, and one of the quickest ways to break your tactical fantasies and actually improve your performance is by getting real feedback. One of the ways you can do that is with ManusX. You're not going to get better at shooting on your own. You need practice, data, and coaching. And you need to make the most of your ammo with good live and dry fire training. Manus is a family of training devices that tracks you while you train. It times and tracks everything you do in a drill and coaches you as you go. It is indispensable to taking your shooting to the next level. Go find them on manusx.com.
Don't forget that we put out new episodes on the 1st and the 15th of every month. If you like what we're doing, you can have our Patreon, give us $1 for each new episode. That money's going to go back into bringing you good content. If you want to interact with us, you could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are at TacTangents. You can also email info@tacticaltangents.com. All right. That's all we got. Good talk.